How's it going, my G's? I've had Decapitator from Soundtoys for maybe almost 10 years or so. Anyway, I've been using this plugin for a long time. And while I don't like always use it because I don't think I always need it, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's like my favorite plugin in the world or something, but it is a very useful one. And just from what I've learned by using it over however many years and the way that I like to use it, I wanted to just give a little tip or a couple of tips actually. So the main reason to use Decapitator obviously is because it's basically a distortion slash saturation unit, you know? So the point of Decapitator for me is to squeeze out extra juice in a sound that I can kind of boost the perceived volume of it and give it a slight bit of coloring and a slight bit of character. But as it stands, it's mostly for me like saturation. So it's mostly sort of enhancing what I've already got. It's not like a creative distortion where I'm sort of generating a load of new harmonics and doing some layering. When you have the punish mode on, it can go quite mental and create new harmonics. In that respect, you could use it in that regard. But generally, it serves, for me at least, the purpose of it serves to be like just saturation unit. So just, you know, kind of increasing power, like brightness and power on a sound essentially. And that, yeah, when I say brightness, I sort of feel like it does a better job for me at getting an extra bit of brightness or like the treble in a sound, you know. Maybe a little bit of the mid-range, the treble and the high end is what I aim to boost really with the Decapitator, because I find if you put too much of it on a sound which has low end in, then you can kind of quickly degrade the sound quality of the low end. That's what I've learned by using it. So I will use it in two ways. Okay, if I'm using it on a sound with low end, like a bass or drums where there's like a kick, basically anything that has sub frequencies, bass or kick. If I'm using it on those, then I'm going to parallel process it on. And if I'm using it on something else which doesn't have a lot of low end on, then I don't mind, just whacking the plugin on and letting it do its thing. But so, for example, this is like a project I'm currently finishing up for a release, like in the future, probably in like a couple of months or so, because there's quite a lot of tracks on the label to come before then. Yeah, so I won't play all of it to you, but there's a little part of one of the bass arps here, and just one little part of the song. And yeah, I'm doing right now this thing where I bounce everything out into stems, and then I kind of like work on the stems a bit, and then like, you know, get ready to do the mastering and stuff like that. So it's at the stage where I've already completed the composition and I've rendered out all the main like groups and things, because it was like a lot of stuff going on. So this is like the whole sort of bass ARP group together as one, and it's already like pretty much fine for me where it's sitting saturation and level wise and everything. But if I did want to add a Decapitator to sort of try to saturate and boost the bass more, if I just throw it on as it is, I mean, it's already like gonna smash the low end like too hard, and it starts to distort, as you can hear. I also have a default setting on Decapitator where I don't use the auto gain, because I'm not a fan of auto gains in the slightest, because you have to personally always readjust your levels yourself, and the auto gain won't know actually where it should be, so you have to do it yourself. So I always turn the auto gain off. So I leave the output up at 0, turn the auto gain off, and I'll save that as my new preset, as like a default preset. So here, if it's directly on, as you hear, it starts to distort, because this got the sub in it. As I mentioned, this has all the low end in with the sub in. So putting it directly on will cause distortion. So if I think I can use it though on the bass to get a little bit more saturation in the mids and the highs, what I'll do is I'll simply use it in parallel. So we can bring the dry down all the way to 0. We can actually then drive the settings a bit harder. So let's drive this right up and turn the brightness up as well, because again, mostly I'm going to emphasize the high frequencies. So we'll turn that up. Yeah, basically just turn the brightness up a bit, turn the drive up a nice amount, and then we can mix that in. And we can find where it starts to distort around 40, bring it back a bit. And usually I'll settle somewhere around 10%, 12%, probably not really realistically ever higher than 15% for this kind of job where there's a sub already in there. So that's why I don't use it so often on like basses that already have sub in. And I'll show you where I use it more often in a moment. But I've kind of, we could even try a bit with the punish because we're using it in such a small amount. Okay. So they're about 8%. So it's a bit of a trade-off always because you're kind of going to sacrifice a little bit of the sub power to get these extra high-end harmonics. So in this case on this track, I was kind of already happy with where the levels were with the kind of basses. So I'm not sure if I'll leave it on the final thing. But sometimes I do need to bring up some of the high end and saturation on a bass if there's not enough, and this is the way that I would then do it. I would use it very sparingly, really exaggerate the brightness. Let's try it again with the let's try a different mode here. Okay, and then always check on and off. So that's maybe a good balance. I might be able to leave that on there, around 8 or 9% on the E mode, with the drive up quite high, the punish off, and the brightness up. That's usually my sort of favourite sort of setting for this plugin. But yeah, make sure I'm not mixing it very, very much because, you know, every time I mix the wet up, I'm going to lose a bit of the clarity of the sub bass, you know, because it's a sound that's got sub bass in. So that's how I use it on sounds which have an important low end element in them. Okay, and yeah, like I said, you know, I don't use it so often on those kinds of sounds, but that is the way that I would use it if I had to. The other place where I do often use Decapitator is on those particular sounds where there is not an important low end element. So like a lead sound, here is like a little kind of ARP thing. Okay, it's sort of a tertiary, you know, middle ground kind of element. Lead, ARP kind of sits in the middle ground somewhere. It doesn't have low end in. It's not really in the way of the bass or anything like that. It's kind of just like adding a bit of groove and melody and a bit of extra nice harmonics, you know, and a bit of musicality to the track. And it's got a bit of a retro kind of video game sort of vibe to it as well, which I like. But this particular sound, for example, this would be one that I would be absolutely confident to just throw on the Decapitator at 100% mix and just drive it up directly, okay? So obviously at some point it will start to get a bit too loud for the mix down, you know, so I've got to still be careful. The E mode always kind of sounds a bit brighter and nicer than the rest of them, in my opinion. But here now, you can see the level is kind of coming up quite a lot as well, but I don't focus so much on the actual readout or the numbers. It's all about how the sound is being manipulated, really, like the perception of it, you know. So, but in this regard, I've been able to saturate the sound quite a lot, and it still sounds clean and it sounds nicer than before. So what I could do if it was like too loud in the mix now, I could bring down the channel a bit, bring the volume down, but it's had this Decapitator coloring saturation applied to it, so we've kind of squeezed out a bit more power in the sound, and we haven't like ruined it by any means. It's still all completely clear and clean, you know, because it's a sound which doesn't have so much low end in, so you can go heavier on the usage of the Decapitator on it. So that's basically the end of this tutorial. That's kind of my tip, my hot take on the Decapitator and how I use it. So really, really, really simple, just to round up. If you use it on a sound with a bunch of low end, sub bass, kick drum, that kind of stuff, it's usually better to use it in parallel and just put it on like 10-15% mix and just find a nice balance that way, and then you won't risk muddying up your low end so much. But if you want to use it on your other sounds, like your layers, your like lead sounds, things that don't have a crucial or a lot of low end in, then you can kind of leave it on full whack on 100% and try the different modes, try the different drive amounts and stuff like that. But you've got a lot more freedom to be a bit more like heavy, hands on, and a bit heavy with the Decapitator settings. So just make sure you don't mess up your low end. If you use it on a low end kind of sound, mix it in gently. You don't need to go too heavy. But if you're using it on layers, other things that don't contain that low end, those low end important frequencies, then go ham. All right, that's my hot take on Decapitator. I'm sure many of you have used it before. I'm sure a lot of you have it. I'm sure some of you use it another way, and that's fine too. But this is the way that I like to use it, and I think that's helped me to keep my mixdowns cleaner when I abide by those kind of 2 rules. All right, thank you, my G's. Have a great rest of your day. I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow. Much love.